Hey, RetconRaider here, and welcome back to another video about Phoenix Point. In my last video, I showcased the many mutant hybrids that we've seen in the concept art and promotional material released by Snapshot Games. But one of the things I wanted to touch on in that video was the PandoraVirus, the alien virus that started this whole mess. Unfortunately, as I went through all of that promotional material, I soon realized that there was no way I was going to fit it all into a single video. Snapshot Games has released multiple stories set in the Phoenix Point universe, and together they all actually paint a pretty comprehensive picture of what the PandoraVirus truly is, where it came from, and how we're probably supposed to defeat it. So in this video, I'll be focusing entirely on revealing some of the mysteries about the PandoraVirus. Most of this information came from the canonical fiction you can read on the official Phoenix Point website, link in the description, so be sure to check that out if you want more details. Let's start by talking about the inspiration behind the PandoraVirus. In Phoenix Point, the PandoraVirus is a mysterious virus of unknown origin that is first discovered in the melting permafrost of the polar ice caps. The virus seems almost completely alien in origin, with only 1% of its genes matching any known terrestrial life form. The fact that this alien virus is first discovered in the frozen ice caps is rather telling, because Julian Gollop has cited the works of H.P. Lovecraft as one of the main influences for Phoenix Point. In particular, he has made reference to the classic story, At the Mountains of Madness, which tells the tale of an ill-fated expedition to Antarctica. In the story, the expedition team discovers ancient alien specimens frozen in the Antarctic, but when the specimens thaw, several of them reanimate, slaughtering most of the expedition members. The survivors eventually stumble upon ruins of an ancient alien city, as well as evidence of extraterrestrial civil war between the elder things that once lived in the city and the formless Shoggoth, which they used as servants. The Civil War resulted in the near extinction of both species, but also laid the groundwork for the creation of all other cellular life on Earth. In the end, the only two survivors of the expedition returned to civilization, one driven hopelessly insane by his experiences, and the other desperately trying to warn off any other explorers who might try mounting their own expeditions to the Antarctic. Similarly, Julian Gollop has noted that John Carpenter's The Thing is also one of his favorite films. In that movie, a research team in Antarctica finds itself under attack by a mysterious alien life form that can assimilate other organic life and then perfectly emulate its form. They discover that it originated from an extraterrestrial vehicle that has been frozen in the ice for over 100,000 years. In the end, the formless thing kills all but two of the researchers before it is seemingly destroyed. In addition, Snapshot Games has recently cited two non-fiction articles with similar stories. The first article, published by BBC, talks about scientific efforts to study viruses that have been frozen in ice for tens of thousands of years. The second article, published by National Geographic, speaks of a real-life PandoraVirus, which, although incapable of aggressively mutating all life on Earth like its fictional counterpart, is still the largest and most complex virus ever discovered. So it's easy to see where Julian Gollop drew inspiration for the creation of his own take on the PandoraVirus. It's an alien organism of extraterrestrial origin, like the creatures seen in both The Mountain of Madness and The Thing. It ended up frozen in the Antarctic for thousands of years before being unleashed again, much like the Shoggoth and the formless thing from those same two stories. And much like John Carpenter's The Thing, it assimilates other organic species and reforms them into new shapes to suit its purposes. Although the creatures encountered in both The Mountain of Madness and The Thing weren't viral in nature, the non-fiction articles published by BBC and National Geographic clearly inspired Gollop to move things in that direction. So now that we know a bit about the inspiration behind the PandoraVirus, let's look at what we know about its history in the game itself. Surprisingly, although Gollop has been hesitant to reveal any significant details about the story, a huge amount of information about the setting has still been revealed through the fiction, posted on the official website. Links are in the description. The stories are very interesting on an individual basis, but when read together they create a rather comprehensive history of the PandoraVirus and its influence on Earth. Now, this does get into some spoilers, so consider yourself warned. If you'd rather read the stories yourself, then feel free to pause the video and go check them out. I can wait. But since you're still here, I guess I'll just keep going. First, let's take a look at The Old Man of the Sea, a story written by Alan Stroud. This story tells of a group of Vikings in the year 787 AD. Traveling along the western coast of North America, they find themselves being slowly transformed by what they refer to as an old god of the deep, and one of the Vikings is thrown overboard during a violent storm. But the castaway Viking didn't die, instead finding that his transformations continued. He grew scaled patches all over his body and discovered that he could swim longer and deeper than ever before. And over time, he also discovered that he was functionally immortal, living to be well over 1,000 years old. Some of the other people he encountered were also infected, but none survived the transformation, and he spent the rest of his life living in voluntary solitude, until eventually returning to the sea. And then there's The Tomb of the Phoenix, a story by Jonas Karatzis which draws heavy influence from At the Mountains of Madness. This story tells of a scientific expedition assembled by Boston University in 1937. This expedition set off to investigate rumors of a mysterious island in the Bellingshausen Sea, off the coast of Antarctica. The expedition discovers that the island is actually an ancient ruined city, built by an intelligent race of hominids that evolved alongside the human race, but brought to the brink of extinction 2.5 million years ago by a virus of extraterrestrial origin. While exploring the ruins, the expedition discovered ancient records that revealed the virus was a fungus from a planet known as Yuggoth, which held an orbit perpendicular to that of the rest of the planets in our solar system. The virus arrived on a chunk of planet that had been expelled from Yuggoth. The fungal virus generated a strange mist that transformed everything it touched into monstrous creatures, and the ancient race had ultimately sacrificed themselves to create a kind of poison that would cripple the virus. Members of the expedition, while initially skeptical, were soon confronted with the truth. Upon finding a mysterious mist-covered pool in one of the ruined temples, many of their number were transformed into monstrous aquatic hybrids that turned on the rest of them, and in the end, very few of them survived. Now let's look at The Hatch, again by Jonas Karatzis. This story tells of a secret expedition to the moon in 1973, the Phoenix 2 mission. I'm not going to talk about the Phoenix Project in this video, but suffice to say, this story tells us quite a bit about the origins of the Phoenix Project that plays a prominent role in the game's main storyline. The Phoenix 2 mission took 3 Phoenix Project operatives to the Tsiolkovsky crater on the far side of the moon. Investigating some anomalous readings they had discovered during the Phoenix 1 mission, these 3 operatives came across a massive alien object, which they determined was part of an object that had struck the moon millennia earlier. While investigating the object, 2 of the 3 astronauts became infected by an alien virus which began to rapidly transform their bodies. When disinfection protocols failed to stop the transformation, the 2 infected operatives vented themselves into space so that they wouldn't bring the infection back to Earth. Set around the same time, Jonas Karatzis' Far Out is a short story that tells about 2 men in the 1970s who somehow entered an astral projection-like state. While in this state, they had glimpses of a distant planet and another civilization. They were ultimately contacted by an otherworldly entity, but when communication proved impossible, the entity killed one of the 2 men. The other man survived and was later questioned by operatives of the Phoenix Project. That brings us to the year 2022. According to the official FIG campaign page, as well as various interviews with Julian Gollop, 2022 is when scientists first discovered the PandoraVirus in the melting permafrost of our polar ice caps. They were excited to find that the virus is almost completely alien, with only 1% of its genes matching any other life on Earth. Unfortunately, their excitement was short-lived, as the virus quickly spread into the oceans, where it rapidly mutated all forms of aquatic life. At some point after that, some of these mutated hybrids began leaving the ocean and invading coastal regions. They were accompanied by a strange mist, an aerial version of the PandoraVirus that was almost certainly generated by these new land-crawling mutants. Wherever the mist went, the mutants went with it, and anything that wasn't killed by these aggressive hybrids was instead changed by the airborne virus. Humans exposed to the mist fell under its control, with some of them transforming into new hybrids, while others simply walked into the ocean and were never seen again. Unprepared for a biological disaster on this scale, humanity quickly fell, and that brings us to the year 2057, the point where the game starts. By this point, the human population has been devastated. There are only scattered pockets of survivors remaining in isolated havens that rely on elevation, strange new technology, or overwhelming firepower to keep them safe. All of this information lets us draw a fairly concise timeline. As established in The Tomb of the Phoenix, the PandoraVirus first originated from the distant planet of Yuggoth, which itself is from the H.P. Lovecraft story The Whisperer in the Darkness. A piece of this planet broke loose and traveled to Earth, first striking the Moon and then landing near Antarctica 2.5 million years ago, during the Pliocene era. There, the virus encountered the then-dominant species of the planet, an intelligent race of hominids. It quickly decimated their civilization, using an airborne mist to infect, transform, and dominate indigenous life forms. It eventually drove the hominids to extinction, but not before it was badly wounded by a xenovenom they had developed. The xenovenom greatly weakened it to the point that it was frozen in the Antarctic waters. It spent millions of years slowly recuperating, and by the 8th century it was able to weakly influence humans, but unable to properly communicate with them or mentally dominate them. It could incite slow mutations, but more aggressive attempts at mutations caused death. By the early 20th century, during the Boston Expedition incident, the virus had recuperated enough to once again generate an airborne mist. It used this mist to dominate members of the expedition, and then swiftly transform them into monstrous creatures. But it showed no signs of being able to extend its reach beyond the island in the Bellingshausen Sea. By the 1970s, it was strong enough to contact people from a great distance. It couldn't dominate them in this fashion, nor could it effectively communicate, but it could kill. This is also when the astronauts of the Phoenix 2 mission came into contact with a chunk of Yuggoth that was on the Moon. The timing of these two incidents may not have been a coincidence. The virus on the Moon was never exposed to the ancient xenotoxin, and seemed much stronger than the virus on Earth, causing a rapid transformation even through airtight spacesuits, and ignoring all attempts at decontamination. Although these astronauts killed themselves before they could return to Earth, it's possible that this somehow strengthened the virus on Earth, perhaps jump-starting its full recovery. In 2022, the virus returned in full force. The permafrost it had been trapped in since the Pliocene era began melting, unleashing it into the oceans. Over the next few years, it rapidly mutated all aquatic life, then began spreading into low-lying coastal regions as a microbial mist. And by the year 2057, it has almost engulfed the entire planet. This all seems to point toward the fungal virus being a singular, hive-minded intelligence, something that is echoed by Julian Gollop in some of his recent interviews. The creatures it infects become dominated, essentially turning into an extension of its hive mind. Although there may still be some remnants of their former intelligence left behind, the more creatures it infects, the stronger it seems to grow. The Viking that was infected in 787 AD, for example, retained his self-awareness despite being infected, but eventually returned to the ocean as the PandoraVirus recovered its strength over the centuries. Inversely, by the 20th century, the virus was strong enough to quickly dominate and transform several people at once, but it was still geographically restricted. Once it was introduced into the oceans, it rapidly began spreading, and within a span of just 30 years, it had grown so strong it had almost conquered the entire planet. With all that in mind, I would speculate that the PandoraVirus is likely manifested as some sort of massive fungal growth, likely hidden deep within the ocean near Antarctica. The microbial mist is an extension of the virus, but no more so than any of the other hybrid mutants the PandoraVirus creates. Julian Gollop essentially confirmed this himself, referring to the microbial mist as both the smallest enemies and the network for the virus's hive mind. The ultimate goal of the Phoenix Project will probably involve finding a way to recreate the xenotoxin that was created by the ancient race of hominids that originally crippled the PandoraVirus, and then to find a way to travel into the depths of the ocean where it can be used against the physical bulk of the fungal creature. While it might not be possible to actually kill the PandoraVirus, this could render it relatively harmless for millions of years, giving humanity plenty of time to rebuild. Unfortunately, we'll have to wait until the game actually comes out before we'll know for certain. So for now, this is RetconRaider signing off. Remember, while I do love talking about Phoenix Point, you can keep up to date with all the latest information by checking out the official web pages. Links are in the description.